Xenoblade Chronicles is a tragedy of cosmic determinism. It is the story of a universe trapped in a cyclic, ego-driven whim of a flawed creator, a demiurge named Zanza, who demands the destruction and rebirth of life to satisfy his own loneliness. For over a decade, we understood Shulk's journey as a linear ascent to slay this blind god and seize his own future, one for any creature to manifest their destiny. That is, until Monolith Soft gave us the Switch 2 edition, and with it, a kart racer. On the surface, the Nopon Grand Prix is a beautifully unhinged piece of DLC, a bizarre minigame thrown in to let players bypass the notorious, agonizing grind of the Colony 6 reconstruction quest by the funniest way possible. But if we peel back the layers of this new discovery, we find something far more profound. The Ether Jet is more than it seems to the naked eye. It is a perfect representation of Xenoblade's thesis on theological rebellion. Welcome to our divine racetrack. In Gnostic cosmology, the physical universe is not the true reality. It is a cheap, claustrophobic forgery. It was constructed by Yaldabaoth, the Demiurge, a blind, arrogant deity who mistook himself for the supreme being. He built a material cage of rigid physical laws to trap divine sparks of light within flesh, subjecting them to an agonizing, endless cycle of reincarnation. In Xenoblade Chronicles, Zanza is our textbook demiurge. He constructs a world of his own body, establishing a linear, deterministic timeline dictated entirely by his will. To walk upon the Bionis is to submit to his geometry. By playing by his rules, we are by definition accepting his role as an assumed creator. We walk at a sluggish pace, blocked by arbitrary invisible walls, are forced to trudge through the swamps of Satoral or climb the exhausting heights of Valak Mountain. This slow terrestrial momentum represents humanity's trappings of the Demiurge's design: linear, predictable, and finite. Then, the racing mode introduces the Ether Jet. The Ether Jet does not walk upon the creation, it hovers above it. By mechanics alone, the Ether Jet actively rejects the terrestrial friction of Zanza's world. When the player initiates a drift, they are manipulating the game's physics engine to generate artificial velocity out of nothingness. Rendering this defiance in a crisp, uncompressed, 4K resolution 60 FPS is a narrative statement above all else. It is the realization of a higher aesthetic plane breaking through a compressed material illusion. Gnosticism famously categorizes the human condition into 3 distinct spiritual tiers based on their capacity for enlightenment. Hylic is bound entirely to the physical world, driven by base instincts, and completely unconscious of anything divine. The Psychic is governed by the mind, intellect, and institutional dogmas. They are aware of a higher power, but remain trapped within the rules and morality of the Demiurge. The Pneumatic is the awakened elite who harbor the divine spark. They possess the capacity to see past the illusion of the material world and achieve total liberation. The core mechanic of the Nopon Grand Prix is not just driving fast, it is collection and alignment of floating ether gems. To unlock a speed boost, the player must collect 3 gems of matching colors in a sequence. This is a blatant, interactive representation of the soul striving for metaphysical alignment within its trinity. If the player is chaotic, randomly grabbing a red gem, then a blue gem, then a green gem, they are in a state of spiritual discord. Their score suffers by not receiving bonuses as an act of judgment from the realm itself. But when you achieve a perfect chain by deliberately aligning 3 gems of the same color, you're achieving Gnosis, the secret experiential knowledge that attracts divine underlying ideas. The resulting boost state is a total liberation from the linear flow of time and space. As the screen blurs and your speed raises, you leave the CPU-controlled party members behind. Those rival racers aren't just bad AI, they're an unawakened Hylics and Psychics, fundamentally incapable of comprehending the transcendent velocity of an enlightened player. In Gnostic thought, far above the arrogant visible demiurge sits the monad. The monad is the true, absolute supreme god. It is completely unknowable, immutable, and exists entirely outside of the corrupted physical universe in a realm of pure light known as the Pleroma. The monad does not interfere with the physical world directly. Instead, it watches, waiting for the trapped divine sparks to filter their way up back to the source. If Zanza is the petty demiurge who demands worship and cyclical sacrifices on the surface of the planet, who sits above him? Some would point to Alvis as the game's story wants you to think. but I would argue that Alvis's direct intervention in the events of the story disclude him from this role. I then have another answer. The Nopon Archsage. The Archsage does not care about the war. He does not care about the Monado, Egil, or the fate of any of the organic races. He resides in a completely detached, trans-dimensional pocket realm. He is the Monad. And what does the Supreme Being demand from the races? Nopon Stones. Through the act of racing, the player performs a form of spiritual alchemy. You drive through the Demiurge's flawed world, collect raw physical ether gems, and then, through a ritual of the perfect chain, transubstantiate that base matter into Nopon Stones. When you cash in these Nopon Stones to instantly require rare materials for the Colony 6 reconstruction, you're completely rewriting the rules of reality. In the standard game, rebuilding Colony 6 is the most tedious part of the game, being a multi-level side quest that has you searching for materials all across the world. In the racing mode, it becomes a manifestation of divine will. You're using the spiritual currency of the Monad to manifest a utopian community from the ground up, entirely bypassing the apocalyptic cycle of destruction and rebirth that Zanza invented. You aren't just rebuilding houses for the immigrants in the central pit. You're reconstructing the fractured pieces of the shattered Pleroma one drift at a time. Therefore, when Monolith Soft gave Shulk a hoverbike, they weren't trying to compete with Mario Kart. They were handing us the keys to spiritual liberation. Juju isn't a bad NPC because of his terrible driving decisions in the main story. He's simply a Hylic who has never tasted divine gnosis of a perfect drift.